I know Stranger Things is great, but sometimes things just don't add up, from impossible scenarios to very questionable plot. Today I'll be talking about 27 plot holes that make even die-hard fans go, wait, what? Let's start with number 1. The Upside Down being frozen in time, but still adding new stuff. So here's the thing, the Upside Down is supposed to be frozen on the day Will disappeared. Every single detail in that world is locked in November 6, 1983. Clocks, radios, Nancy's room, it is all stuck. But then we see something weird. Even though the Upside Down is stuck in time, it reacts when things happen in the real world. Lights in the real Hawkins can spark something over there, and loud sounds can shake the place like it is alive. Basically, the place is supposed to be frozen but also not frozen, depending on what the story needs. Crazy, right? Most people do not even notice this the first time, but when you think about it, it really breaks the logic. Why lock one part of the world in time if anything new can just pop in? This is one of the biggest plot holes in the show because the rules jump around just to make the story exciting. Number 2, Joyce alphabet wall not making sense because the letters were added after the freeze date. Okay, wait, this one hits hard. In season 1, Joyce hangs the lights with letters to talk to Will, but season 4 tells us the Upside Down is frozen on Will's missing day. That means the alphabet wall should not exist in the Upside Down because Joyce made it later. Yet Will uses the wall to communicate with her, and somehow it works. Shocking, right? It feels like the freeze rule was added later. This is where the alphabet wall comes in, and it doesn't quite fit with the freeze rule. Number 3, how Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Dustin escape the Upside Down in season 4. Here's where it gets crazy. The kids end up in the Upside Down, and as usual, it is dangerous and basically a trap. Portals are supposed to be rare and tricky, but somehow they find a ceiling gate in Eddie's trailer. That gate just works perfectly to get them out. The rules of portal creation are never explained, and it makes the whole escape feel lucky rather than earned. Most people just cheer when they get out, but if you think about it, this scene is totally illogical. The show breaks its own rules just to move the plot forward. Number 4, Demogorgons losing powers. The show already gave them. This one is wild. In season 1, the Demogorgon is basically unstoppable. It opens portals, senses blood from far away, and tanks fire and bullets. By season 2 and 3, they are easier to defeat. Wait, what happened? The show never explains why these later monsters are weaker. It is like the writers realized the first one was too strong to fight, so they just nerfed the creatures. Fans notice this change immediately, and it feels like a plot hole, because the story never gives a reason. The rules of the Upside Down are supposed to stay consistent, yet the Demogorgons do not. Number 5, Joyce, surviving a whole plane crash with 0 injuries. Alright, this one makes you go, wait, what? In season 4, Joyce ends up on a plane that basically crashes in Russia. Like, we are talking about a full-on disaster that should leave anyone seriously hurt. But Joyce, she walks away like nothing even happened. No scratches, no bruises, nothing. Most people do not even blink at it when watching, but think about it. She just survives one of the most insane accidents in the show with 0 consequences. How does that work? Even the characters do not react like they just watched a death-defying crash. It feels like the writers just wanted Joyce to get from point A to point B without slowing down the story. So here we have another plot hole where real-world physics and the stakes of danger just disappear. It makes you wonder, was anyone else supposed to have gotten hurt, or was Joyce just magically untouchable that day? Most fans point to this scene and shake their heads because the tension built up by the crash just evaporates. Number 6, Eleven's rewritten lab history that clashes with season 1. Okay, this one messes with your brain. Season 4 goes deep into Eleven's childhood at Hawkins' lab. Flashbacks show her opening a gate way before Will disappears, but in season 1, we were led to believe she first opened a gate during the Russian spy thing when she was older. So now the timeline clashes. 11 opening a gate before Will disappeared messes with the show's timeline and makes the Upside Down feel confusing. Fans notice this immediately because it rewrites part of the story we thought we knew. And the crazy part, 11 opens a gate before Will disappears, which makes the timeline feel messy and confusing for viewers. Most people just shrug and go along with it, but if you think about it, this really breaks continuity. Eleven's history gets edited mid-show in a way that feels convenient rather than logical. Number 7, Will's birthday being forgotten by every single person. This one is just sad. Will's birthday is March 22nd, and the show even makes it a big deal in season 2. But fast forward to season 4 in California, and somehow nobody, literally nobody mentions it. Mike, Joyce, 11, nobody. Fans noticed immediately because it is such an important personal moment for Will. Later, the Duffer Brothers admitted it was just a mistake. and they actually forgot. So technically, it is a real-life plot hole. It is not story critical, but it is jarring because fans notice these small details and expect consistency. It also adds to the feeling that some events in Hawkins' life just get ignored. Poor Will. He even gets the wrong birthday vibes for fans watching closely. Number 8. The Scoops Ahoy manager being blind to everything happening. Now this one is hilarious. Scoops Ahoy was basically the kids' secret base for uncovering Russian conspiracies. Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Erica are running around using it as HQ and doing all sorts of dangerous stuff. And the manager, totally oblivious. No questions, no concern, nothing. Most people watching just laugh, but when you think about it, the manager should have noticed suspicious activity. Even the set gives hints that something is off, but nope, the boss is clueless. This plot hole is funny, but also makes you shake your head at how the town works. How does no adult notice 4 teenagers essentially running a secret ops center under their nose? Fans point to this as one of the smaller, but still glaring moments of impossible oversight. Number 9. The mystery green substance in the Russian bunker. Alright, this one is just weird. In Season 3, Steve, Dustin, Robin, and Erica stumble upon a secret underground Russian bunker, and inside there is a whole room full of this glowing green stuff. At first it seems important. The scene builds suspense, and you naturally expect it to play a major role later. But guess what? Nothing. The green substance in the Russian bunker is shown once and isn't referenced again, leaving its purpose unclear and unresolved. Fans have been left scratching their heads for years, wondering if it was just set dressing or a dropped storyline. The visual is dramatic, the lighting intense, and the mystery is tantalizing. It is one of those moments that could have been huge but ends up feeling like a dangling plot thread. Most people notice it instantly, and it is hard not to think about it when rewatching Season 3. The green substance is just one example of how Stranger Things sometimes sets up something mysterious and never follows through, leaving fans with that lingering question, what was the point of this? Number 10. Why the Russians built a base under a mall. Okay, this one makes zero sense if you think about it. The Russian government sets up a massive secret lab right under the Hawkins Mall, a public place full of civilians and right where kids hang out constantly. What could possibly go wrong, right? From a security standpoint, it is a nightmare waiting to happen. One small slip and everyone would know. Fans have pointed out that an abandoned factory or a remote warehouse would make way more sense, yet the Russians choose a busy, central location with no backup plan. It stretches believability in a way that makes you laugh and groan at the same time. The mall is visually perfect for the show's 1980s aesthetic, but logically, it is absurd. Every time someone replays the scenes, they notice how risky it is, and it becomes one of the most talked about plot holes. Most people accept it because it creates exciting moments for the characters, but if you step back, it is almost impossible that such a secret could survive in that location for so long. Number 11. Hopper doing crimes as a cop with no consequences. Now this is fun and frustrating at the same time. In Season 3, Hopper is technically a police officer, but he does a ton of illegal things. He beats up the mayor, steals a car in a gas station, and essentially bends the law however he wants. And the crazy part, nothing happens. Zero repercussions. Fans notice this immediately because it contradicts everything they thought they knew about law enforcement in Hawkins. Normally, these actions would lead to serious trouble, but Hopper just slides through like a hero in a video game. It makes you question how the town even functions. Is everyone too distracted by monsters to notice a cop breaking the law? The show does not explain it, and the audience is left to accept that Hopper has a sort of immunity. It is funny, it is unbelievable, and it is exactly the kind of plot hole fans love to debate online. Most people just go along with it, but when you think about it, Hopper is basically getting away with everything. Number 12. 11 losing her powers with no clear reason. Here's one that hits hard for fans. In Season 4, 11 suddenly loses her powers, and while the show hints it might be a mental block or the tiny piece of mind flare affecting her, it is never clearly explained. One moment she is telekinetic, lifting doors and moving objects with her mind, and the next she is powerless in critical moments. Fans naturally ask why, and the show's vague explanation leaves everyone unsatisfied. This plot hole is more about storytelling convenience than logic. The stakes are high because her powers are crucial, and suddenly she is limited for reasons we barely understand. It makes you anxious, frustrated, and curious all at the same time. Most people notice this immediately, and it is one of those gaps that sparks long discussions online. Losing powers in the middle of a plot without a solid reason is a classic way to increase tension, but it also makes you stop and think, wait, what just happened? Number 13. Hopper's sudden switch from lazy cop to action hero. This one is wild. In the first 2 seasons, Hopper is basically the definition of a lazy and bad cop. He shows up late to miss his obvious clues and seems more interested in coffee than crime solving. But by Season 3, he suddenly turns into this action hero. He is chasing Russians, investigating secret labs, and taking on dangerous situations like a pro. Fans noticed immediately because the shift feels abrupt. There's no real explanation for it in the show, and it makes you stop and wonder, what happened to the lazy cop we knew? The transformation happens off-screen, so the audience is expected to accept it without question. Most people just enjoy seeing Hopper in action, but if you think about the continuity, it is a big jump. It feels like the writers needed him to be competent for the Russian plotline, so they fast-forwarded his character development. It works for the story, but it is a classic plot hole that leaves fans debating how and why his personality changed so drastically. We are supposed to buy that the same man who struggled with basic police work is now capable of complex operations with no training or explanation. Number 14. Hopper pushing Joyce to date so fast after Bob. Okay, this one hits awkwardly. At the end of season 2, Joyce loses her boyfriend Bob to a demo dog attack, which is tragic. Fast forward only a year and Hopper starts actively pursuing Joyce, trying to date her. It is a little too soon considering the trauma Joyce went through. Most people would expect some hesitation, some respect for grief, but the show skips over that entirely. Fans notice immediately because it feels out of character. Hopper is supposed to be understanding, yet here he is nudging someone who just lost a loved one. It creates tension that could have been interesting if handled differently, but instead it just raises eyebrows. The plot hole is subtle because it is more about emotional realism than logistics, but it is still there. The audience is left asking, why would he push this fast? Is it a timeline issue or just a rushed romance plot? Either way, it feels inconsistent and adds another strange moment for fans to notice when rewatching. Number 15, the mall explosion being covered up with a basic fire story. Here's one that really makes you go, wait, what? At the end of season 3, the Hawkins Mall literally explodes during the Russian showdown. You would expect chaos, investigations, and nationwide news coverage. Instead, the government tells everyone it was just a fire, and somehow everyone believes it. No questions, no reports, no media frenzy. Fans immediately noticed how impossible this is because the destruction was massive. How could no one hear it or question the official story? The show treats it casually, but the scale of the event makes the explanation absurd. It is like the writers just needed the story to move forward without dealing with the consequences of a huge explosion in a public space. Most people enjoy the visual spectacle, but cannot ignore the logic gap. The plot hole is subtle because the story continues smoothly, but if you pause and think about it, the government's explanation is way too simple for such a catastrophic event. Number 16, the Mind Flayer. Somehow not knowing 11. Alright, this one is confusing. In season 2, the Mind Flayer is inside Will, which means it is aware of the kids, 11 included. You would think after that, it would recognize her and her powers immediately, but in season 3, it acts like 11 is a complete unknown. Fans notice this immediately because it contradicts the creature's previous intelligence and awareness. How does a being that controlled Will not remember the one kid who is constantly around him? It is a plot hole that feels like the writers needed a fresh threat for season 3 without explaining continuity. Most people accept it because it ramps up tension and gives 11 a challenge, but if you think about the logic, it is a glaring inconsistency. The Mind Flayer's memory and recognition suddenly vanish, and the audience is left wondering why. It is one of those moments that makes you pause and say, hold up, that does not make sense based on what we saw earlier. Number 17, Lucas joining basketball with zero buildup. Here's a weird one that fans immediately noticed in season 4. Lucas suddenly appears on the high school basketball team and is trying to become popular. The problem, we never saw him play or show interest in basketball in any of the previous seasons. One minute he is hanging out with the group, and the next he is scoring points and making plays in the championship game. It feels completely out of nowhere. The show does not provide any backstory, training montage, or reason for this sudden talent. Most viewers just accept it because it gives Lucas a personal storyline and adds teen drama. But when you think about it, the jump is huge. The inconsistency is noticeable because Stranger Things usually takes care to develop its characters gradually. Suddenly giving him this skill without context is a clear plot hole. It is one of those moments where you pause and think, wait, did I miss something? The writers probably wanted a fun subplot for season 4, but it comes at the cost of continuity. Fans online have joked about Lucas suddenly being a basketball prodigy and how this change feels arbitrary. It is a small plot hole compared to the upside down stuff, but it sticks out because Stranger Things is usually very careful with its characters. Most people just enjoy the scenes, but the logic gap is impossible to ignore. Number 18, Dustin and friends translating Russian that they should not understand. Okay, this one is tricky. In season 3, Dustin, Steve, and Robin intercept a Russian audio recording, and somehow they manage to translate it using a dictionary. The issue? None of them know Russian. A voice recording in Russian is basically meaningless without knowing the alphabet, pronunciation, and grammar. Yet, the kids miraculously figure out what is being said. Fans immediately notice this because it stretches believability in a show that usually tries to ground its science and tech moments in reality. It is a convenient plot hole designed to move the story forward without slowing down the tension. Most people just enjoy the clever teamwork and suspense, but logically, this should not work. A Russian dictionary alone is not enough to understand outspoken sentences without prior knowledge, and the fact that they succeed without struggle is a clear oversight. It is one of those moments where you cheer for the kids, but also groan at the impossible translation feat. This scene sparks debates online because it is fun, but technically impossible. The show sacrifices realism for pacing and excitement, and while it works for entertainment, fans cannot ignore the gap in logic. It is a perfect example of how Stranger Things sometimes prioritizes story momentum over consistency. Number 19. No one having PTSD after monsters and death. Here is a plot hole that hits emotionally. The kids in Stranger Things face death, monsters, and trauma constantly. Will almost dies multiple times. 11 is abused in the lab, and Max loses her brother. Yet, until season 4, almost none of the characters show realistic signs of PTSD. There are no nightmares, panic attacks, or lasting emotional scars. The only exception is Max after Billy dies. Fans immediately notice this because surviving literal monsters would have a huge psychological impact. It is almost impossible that 11-year-olds or teens would process these events without long-term effects. Most people overlook it while enjoying the story, but it is a glaring inconsistency. The show has the opportunity to explore mental health and trauma, but it largely ignores it, creating a strange sense of emotional detachment. It is subtle, but it sticks out because Stranger Things is so intense. Seeing kids brush off life-threatening events without major psychological consequences feels unrealistic. Fans online debate why the trauma is mostly absent, and it is considered one of the most overlooked plot holes that could have added depth to the characters. The omission leaves viewers wondering how any of them would realistically cope with repeated exposure to death and danger. Number 20, cops failing to track Eddie while kids find him fast. This one is frustrating and almost unbelievable. In season 4, Eddie disappears, and the Hawkins police are shown wandering around cluelessly while the kids manage to locate him using a combination of video store rentals, logic, and personal intuition. The inconsistency is obvious. How are trained adults tasked with public safety unable to find one missing person while a group of kids solves it in hours? Fans immediately point out the plot hole because it stretches credibility. The police are supposed to be the authority, yet they act incompetent while the children are resourceful and efficient. It is clearly written this way to highlight the kids' cleverness, but it creates a glaring logical gap. Most viewers accept it as part of the show's charm, but it is impossible to ignore the inconsistency when thinking about realistic investigation standards. The cops fail repeatedly, yet the narrative makes it seem normal. It also feeds into the recurring theme of children solving problems adults cannot, which is fun, but not realistic. Fans often debate this online as one of the most obvious loopholes that could have been handled better, especially since the show goes to great lengths to show adult characters as competent in other scenarios. Number 21. People not moving out of Hawkins, even with the chaos. This one is honestly baffling. Hawkins, Indiana, has had literal monsters, secret Russian labs, and major disasters hit it multiple times. Kids and adults have been kidnapped, killed, or possessed, and yet almost nobody leaves town. You would think people would pack up and move somewhere safe after all the chaos. But no, the residents stay like nothing is happening. Fans immediately noticed how unrealistic this is. Even Joyce and her kids only leave because a secret government organization relocates them, not because the town is dangerous. Most viewers just go along with it because the story keeps the setting familiar, but logically, it makes zero sense. The show treats Hawkins as a place that constantly endangers its citizens, yet life carries on as normal. It is a classic plot hole that highlights how the Duffer Brothers prioritize storytelling over realism. You can imagine fans asking, wouldn't you just move after your kid got taken by a shadow monster or after a mall exploded? Yet the show never addresses it. It is one of those inconsistencies that makes you pause and think about how fictional towns in TV shows often ignore basic survival instincts. The tension of monsters versus normal life works for the story, but the decision of the residents is still eyebrow-raising. Number 22, Billy only getting involved because of one random choice. This is such a strange chain of events. In season 3, Billy becomes involved with the Mind Flayer almost entirely by accident. He was simply driving to have an affair with Mrs. Wheeler when the creature attacks him. If he had made any other choice that night, he probably wouldn't have been possessed or killed. Fans noticed immediately how flimsy this connection is. It makes his whole storyline feel accidental rather than driven by character or plot. The show needs him in the story for drama and stakes, but the method of getting him there is extremely convenient. Most people just enjoy the tension and character conflict, but it is a clear plot hole when thinking logically. His involvement hinges entirely on a single random decision, which stretches believability. Fans online joke about how Billy's life could have been completely different if he had simply stayed home or taken another route. It is one of those moments where the story demands a character be in danger, so the writers manufacture a scenario that works, but it creates a noticeable inconsistency. The randomness makes it feel like chance rather than storytelling, which is exactly what plot holes are all about. Number 23 theory, Will's bowl cut still existing. Here's one that is mostly funny, but still weird. Will Byers has had the same terrible bowl cut since season 1, and nobody, including his mom or friends, seems to notice or care. Meanwhile, characters like Steve have elaborate hairstyles that change with the seasons. Fans immediately noticed and joked online about who is cutting Will's hair and why it keeps coming back to that same style. It is a minor plot hole compared to the upside down rules, but it is still a continuity error that sticks out. Stranger Things is usually careful with period detail and character appearance, but Will's hair is stuck in a permanent loop. Most viewers overlook it because the focus is on the plot and the danger in Hawkins, but if you are paying attention, it is hilarious and confusing. It adds to the charm in a way, but also highlights how even small visual inconsistencies can bother superfans. This one is funny, but technically it is a plot hole because it ignores realistic grooming habits and character continuity. It is a perfect example of a minor but noticeable error that shows the show does not always account for small details over multiple seasons. Number 24. Cops not noticing the same group of kids at every crime scene. Here's one that really tests your suspension of disbelief. In Hawkins, almost every season, a group of kids is at the center of the town's mysteries, monsters, and crimes. Yet the police never notice this pattern. It is almost as if these kids are invisible to law enforcement. Fans have pointed this out because it is impossible to miss a consistent group being involved in multiple disasters, disappearances, and death. Most viewers just enjoy the kids solving problems and fighting monsters, but logically, the cops should be questioning why these same faces keep showing up. It is one of the biggest recurring plot holes because it highlights a failure in adult awareness and realism. Stranger Things consistently shows the kids as resourceful and brave, but it undermines the world building when the authorities remain oblivious. The oversight makes fans pause and ask, how is this even possible? It works narratively to keep the story focused on the kids, but in terms of consistency and logic, it is a clear gap that continues across seasons. This one stands out because it happens every year, yet no explanation is given, making it one of the more glaring plot holes in the series. Number 25, Dustin's radio tower reaching Utah. This is one of those moments that makes fans go, wait, really? In season 3, Dustin builds a radio tower to call his girlfriend Susie in Utah. The show makes it look like this is possible, but realistically, a kid-made radio tower from Hawkins, Indiana, reaching Salt Lake City is basically impossible. Fans immediately notice the plot hole because it stretches credibility even within the show's sci-fi rules. Dustin is brilliant and resourceful, sure, but building a tower that can transmit across state lines is a massive engineering challenge, not something you can cobble together with household parts and a bit of ingenuity. The scene is exciting and fun, and it gives Dustin a standout moment of cleverness, but logically, it is highly unlikely. It is a perfect example of the show prioritizing story excitement over realism. Most viewers forgive it because it works dramatically and strengthens the subplot with Susie, but when you pause and think, this is a serious leap in believability. The Duffer Brothers love giving the kids impossible solutions that work out, and this is one of the most noticeable. Fans online often debate the science behind it, but in the end, it is another plot hole that exists purely to serve the story. It's fun, it's charming, but it makes you question how a teen in a small town pulls off something that normally requires professional equipment and permit. Number 26, Eleven speaking well in flashbacks but barely talking in season 1. This one is a weird continuity hiccup. In season 1, Eleven barely speaks a word, communicates mostly through gestures, and has a very limited vocabulary. Then in the season 4 flashbacks, younger Eleven is suddenly speaking in full sentences with a developed vocabulary. Fans immediately notice this inconsistency because it clashes with her established character. The show tries to explore her early life and development, but it unintentionally rewrites the timeline of her language skills. Most viewers enjoy learning about Eleven's childhood and her struggles in Hawkins' lab, but logically, this is confusing. How did she suddenly go from speaking in full sentences to near silence in season 1? It is a classic plot hole because it ignores the natural development and regression of a child raised in extreme isolation. The Duffer Brothers probably wanted her flashbacks to be emotionally engaging and coherent, but the continuity issue sticks out for attentive fans. It creates questions about her education and how her interactions in the lab actually went. Some people shrug it off because the story is strong and the flashbacks are important, but it is a noticeable gap in character consistency. Number 27, how the Russians got a Demogorgon to their prison. This is one of the most head-scratching plot holes in Season 4. The Upside Down is always shown as being connected to Hawkins, and monsters are never shown to leave that area easily, yet the Russian government somehow manages to transport a Demogorgon to a top-secret prison without explanation. Fans immediately question the logistics. How did they move a dangerous creature without it escaping or killing anyone during transit? The show does not provide an answer, leaving viewers to fill in the gaps with imagination. It is clearly written this way to raise stakes and introduce the Russian subplot, but it completely ignores the established rules of the Upside Down. Most people just accept it to keep watching, but logically, it makes zero sense. The Demogorgon is not exactly a controllable pet, and transporting it would be an enormous challenge, especially internationally. This plot hole sticks out because it undermines the world building that Stranger Things carefully sets up. Fans online often joke about the invisible plane or magical containment the Russians must have used. It is a perfect example of the show bending reality to serve the plot while leaving a giant gap in logic that viewers cannot easily reconcile.